there's a candidate seeking office. That candidate could be an independent, it could be a Democrat, Republican, whatever. That's not the issue. The issue is you can't be involved in elections of candidates, because a lot of school boards are nonpartisan, by the way, and you can't get involved in that either. Secondly, though, if you file for an age selection, you can do a certain amount of lobbying work. There's a formula. Essentially, I'm a little rusty on this, and you can say the exact formula, but a percentage of your spending in a given year can go to lobbying activity. Direct lobbying.
Welcome to another episode of Her Story. Today we're here with Dr. Sue Klein. She's the Education Equity Director of the Feminist Majority Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you. And I'd love to hear first about what inspired you to pursue your career.
Well, I'm one of two children. I have a brother, and I guess at a fairly young age, always wanted to be treated equal to my brother, and my parents were pretty good about doing that. And then as I continued on through school, I had moved from Virginia to Illinois, and it was a time of early attention to race segregation, and I liked in Illinois that there was more race integration in Illinois than in Virginia, and always applauded that. So I was always concerned about equity issues.
Wonderful. So who were some of your role models early on?
Well, starting with my parents, my father was an economist, a transportation economist, but on his spare time he did some sculpting. He actually started to do sculptures of his family when he was a little boy, and later on, when he had time, around the time he retired, he sculpted others in his family, like me and my daughter Sherry.
That's wonderful. I think I noticed those when I walked in. They're fantastic.
Yes, they're very good, and so we'll take pictures and show them to you.
So tell me about some of the people that in your life that kind of spurred you on to pursue work on feminist issues.
Well, various people, my parents and colleagues, and I was always interested in being treated equally with my brother, and so that helped. And early on in my career, I worked in the U.S. Department of Education after I received my doctorate in education psychology, and from that I was always interested in equal attention. I did my dissertation on student influence on teacher behavior.
Oh, that's interesting.
Around that time they thought that the teachers were totally in control of the classroom and didn't have to pay much attention to the students. And I said, if the students are reinforcing the teacher and smiling at the teacher, it makes it easier for the teacher to interact with the students.
That's interesting.
And so I did a whole dissertation on that. And then later on in my career in the Department of Education, I was interested in how women are being treated, and was very much influenced by the good work of Eleanor Smeal, who was the director of, the president of NOW, and then later became the director of president of the Feminist Majority Foundation.
Yeah.
And so,
What was it about her work that really inspired you?
well, she attacked all kinds of feminist issues that I hadn't known about, like the drug mifepristone to help with abortions, and provided leadership to NOW, the National Organization of Women, to address women's issues in all kinds of ways, and was one of the leaders of the Equal Rights Amendment, and she helped pass that initially in Congress and then get its extension. Ellie Smeal was a fantastic inspiration. As a matter of fact, she still is, in leading the fight against all the Trump attacks on feminist beliefs and all the discrimination that he's encouraged to continue against us.
Yeah.
And we picked that up. And also Bunny Sandler was another major inspiration. I mentioned that I did my dissertation on student influence on teacher behavior. Bunny was teaching then, and she allowed me to come into her classroom one day when she wasn't teaching, and I tried my experiment on student influence on teacher behavior in her classroom, and that's how I got to know her and to learn about all of her activities in support of Title IX and holding the hearings on Title IX and creating testimony, and became longtime friends with Bunny before she died, and all of her contributions to fighting sex discrimination, primarily at the college level, but at all levels.
Yeah. I'm interested because you're not just interested in equal rights for women, but you definitely focus on in education. That's an interesting. It's specific, and I'm curious if you want to speak a little bit more about that. I don't think people realize how unfair the educational system had been or can be.
Right. Well, actually, around the same time, in the early 1970s, there were two thrusts for fighting for equal rights. One was the Equal Rights Amendment, which has finally, in 2020, passed the required 38 votes to approve the Equal Rights Amendment and ratify it, but it still hasn't been ratified because of the Trump administration canceling it. But the other major improvement at that time was the passage of Title IX. And over the years, I worked in the U.S. Department of Education, and whenever I had the opportunity, I worked on women's equity and equal rights. And over the years, I wrote over 200 articles, mostly some about sex equity in education, and others about more general topics like how to disseminate information and how to evaluate information to learn what works. And right now, I'm very disappointed that when they've been trying to abolish the Department of Education, in addition to the Office for Civil Rights, where Jeanette Lim Esbrook was a leader, they have effectively fired almost all the staff at the Institute of Education Sciences where I used to work, it was called various things over the, I guess it's about 40 or 50-year period
Yeah.
that I worked there. And that was the research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. So all of that work has also been canceled as the staff have been fired under Trump. It's very disappointing.
Yeah.
And we hope that it'll be restored soon. There are, of course, lawsuits to restore the whole Department of Education. We hope that they succeed soon and people are rehired for their positions. One of the things working in government over the years is, and on women's issues, is I saw continual improvement and people paying attention to more nuances of what discrimination was and how to fight against it. And one of the issues that I did research on after I retired from the U.S. Department of Education was to work on topics at the Feminist Majority Foundation. I chose to work with Ellie Smeal at the Feminist Majority Foundation, and she asked me to take over the education aspects of the Feminist Majority Foundation, which works on all kinds of things. One of their major thrusts was fighting for equity for women in Afghanistan and other issues. But in the area of education, one of the issues that we became very concerned with was fighting to end sex segregation in education, where they often had different classes for girls and boys, thinking that girls and boys learn differently, which is not true.
Yeah.
And of course stereotyping how they would treat boys and girls, and we got them to stop doing that to some extent with looking at Title IX, which says non-discrimination on the basis of sex.
Right, right. So that's wonderful. Thank you. I understand you've written some books.
Yes. When I was in the U.S. Department of Education, I took an assignment with the Women's Advisory Council, and during that time I was able to put together a first research synthesis of the status of women's equity in education. And the first book that we put together, working with over 100 education researchers, was called The Handbook for Achieving Sex Equity Through Education. And here's after I retired from the U.S. Department of Education in 2003, I joined the Feminist Majority and became the Education Equity Director under Eleanor Smeal. And the first major project I did at the Feminist Majority was updating the handbook that I had created earlier when I worked in the U.S. Department of Education. And the new handbook we call Achieving Gender Equity Through Education. And that again was many education researchers who knew a lot about gender equity in education in all aspects of education. And we learned a lot. And then throughout the years, as I worked at the Feminist Majority since 2003, we dealt in other areas of interest that would help advance Title IX. And one of those areas was sex segregation, which we mentioned before, that where we wanted to stop sex segregation in public education.
Yeah.
because it was discriminating against women. And although many people thought that it helped women, but we didn't think that men and women learn differently. Another major topic that I'm still very concerned with is building what I call the Title IX infrastructure. That is, how everybody implements Title IX, because even though Title IX is a simple law that tries to stop sex discrimination in education, it is complicated because there are many, many aspects of education. It also happens in libraries and museums, all areas where there's education. Title IX applies, and you need to have skilled people in the schools or other institutions who know what Title IX covers in all areas, from sexual harassment to STEM sciences, where women have often been excluded. And we were able to address that, but Bunny Sandler was one of the major people who got the idea when Title IX was first developed and helped write the Title IX regulations, that we should have a Title IX coordinator in the schools and school districts who knew about Title IX and could train other Title IX coordinators in what it was all about and what people should do to stop segregation. And so they finally put Title IX in the Title IX regulations. And I, at the Feminist Majority, for many years kept track of state Title IX coordinators who worked in state education agencies to tell people about Title IX and implement it. And they in turn worked with people in school districts and schools to help implement Title IX. So that's what we worked on in many years. And
I understand CWI did a tribute to Bunny.
yes, that was a wonderful event, although very sad to lose Bunny after all.
Yeah.
Her many, many, many years of contributions. So the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues had a special lunch program where we invited a lot of people who had worked with Bunny over the years to talk about their favorite remembrances of Bunny. And I think we have a clip of it that we can show you.
Oh, wonderful.
And appreciation for the National Women's Hall of Fame. We'd like to present you with this award of appreciation for women of the National Women's Hall of Fame and for all women, United States women, for doing what you've done for Title IX. So I'll give this to you.
First, I want to tell you, when they said I came on too strong for a woman, this was 40 years ago. I was much more demure and violent and sweet and lovely, but I was so too strong for a woman. I also want to say that, what I didn't mention before, simply because I forgot, that you don't do anything like this alone. That there were hundreds of women on campuses at the beginning who risked their jobs to find information about discrimination and send it to me so we could file charges against their institution. Some of them did lose their jobs. Some of them never got tenure. Some of them never got a raise. Some of them even went on welfare. So it was not an easy struggle. A lot of people worked on it. I've been very visible, but they were invisible. And I just want to honor those women tonight because the award is not only for me, but for them as well. I also had such a good time doing a lot of this, even though it was often frustrating. But I worked with people like Senator Birch Fine and Representative Patsy Neat, and boy, did they teach me a lot. They had no idea how naive and inexperienced I was at the time. I would also say that I was so naive that I thought in 1 year we would solve everything after Title IX. People would simply say, you know, you were discriminating, and they would say, oh, I'm so sorry. I won't do that anymore. And then I raised my estimate to 2 years, and then to 5 years. And finally have realized that we are part of a very, very long movement and revolution in social history, because we are really changing the very basis of human relations. And that does take a bit longer than any discrimination. Thank you all very, very much.
That was wonderful, thank you. We're here speaking with Sue, and could you tell me a little bit about the Women's Clearinghouse on Women's Issues?
Yes, the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues is now over 50 years old. It was started by some colleagues, primarily Joyce Simonson, who was one of my favorite bosses over the years in the Department of Education. She was at the National Advisory Council on Women's Educational Programs. She was in charge of it. And that's when we did our first handbook. Then there were various years, and when Barbara Ratner, who was then president of the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues for about 7 years, decided to retire, we needed volunteers to take over the organization. So Harriet Stonehill, a longtime member, and I volunteered to be co-presidents of the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues. And we've taken it over in recent years. When Harriet retired, Connie Cordovilla took over as co-president, and now Jan Erickson from the National Organization for Women is co-president. And we've had tons of amazing speakers to inform us about women's issues and other issues of interest to women and to better government and democracy over the years at the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues.
That's wonderful. You do great work.
We try.
Yeah.
And now we have a lot to do to defend our past work and continue on with the progress that we've made, despite all the horrible attacks on what is now often called to this diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, and many other things, and of course the attack on all of government under the Trump administration.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to tell the youth of today?
Help us join in the fight, learn about the good laws that we have on the books, and keep them there and enforce them, and learn how to implement them in your daily life with whatever you're doing to improve things in government-controlled areas and outside of government-controlled areas.
Yeah.
They've even been attacking things like the Smithsonian institutions, which do receive some government funds, but aren't totally under control of the government.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back. Do you have any last thoughts before we close out?
Well, one of the things that's been very instrumental over the years is Title IX, that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in federally assisted programs. And we've made a lot of progress. When I started out, women were much less than half of the university attendees and graduates.
Wow.
And I was happy through the years to see that increase. And now women are more likely to be graduates at almost all levels of education than men, but of course not in certain areas,
Yeah.
such as the STEM areas and computer science, which is growing. There are more men than women.
Mhm.
And so we need to continually to strive for equal access and non-discrimination in all areas for both women and men, and not to discriminate against men in any way or women in any way.
Right.
And more people need to know about it and to know the laws, and we have to fight hard that the current attacks on the Department of Education, the Office for Civil Rights in the Department of Education, by the way, their Office of Civil Rights in other federal agencies that need to be protected to fight against sex discrimination. And everybody needs to know about those and to support them with Title IX coordinators and other people who are knowledgeable about sex discrimination in education.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, many of our clearinghouse on women's issues have dealt with Title IX specifically, and they've also been dealt with the Equal Rights Amendment, which we're still trying to get a congressional resolution by the House and the Senate to pass to make it harder for any people to retract the Equal Rights Amendment and to put it clearly in the Constitution as it should be for the 28th Amendment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Fantastic.
It's been fun talking with you, Ann.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us, and please join us again for another episode of Her Story.
Oh, I'm proud of them because I know what they have done, and they do a lot of tremendously good work and hard work.
But you have been our leader through all of the wonderful Title IX programs that you have really pushed forward in the laws, and so
Yeah, it takes a lot of people to do it, and you pass a law and it's great, but there've got to be people who then push to get that law enforced, and that's what those women are doing and have been doing for years. And without them, Title IX is not as good as it would be.
From Jill and Linda Shevitz and the women at the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, we thank you so much, and please keep up the great work.
Oh, well, that's what I would say to them, because they're doing the hard work, which is in the field. They need to continue, and I know that they will.
Well, thank you so much. We're
Thank
great.